Well, welcome back to another exciting week of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
Judy Nathans.
Yeah, and let's see, I think in terms of the city hallisms of it all, I think they took a week off,
Yeah.
but they were back
Last night, and they had to have all the charter right agenda to take care of before the regular agenda.
So our valiant counselors had to sort of basically do
it was almost a 5-hour meeting.
Yeah.
Well, including the tax rate.
The tax rate hearing, which is, it's always, I think if this was any other city, any other place, you'd probably have some controversy and a lot of back and forth about, well, Mr. Manager, why is the tax rate so high or so low, or why is the levy this way or that way?
Two public commenters.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's sort of paradoxically, or maybe not paradoxically, but it's curiously a topic that is barely discussed in Cambridge.
Are we going to talk about that now? Because there's something that kept coming up, and I really couldn't understand. What's the $9 million kept being referred to? Now, what is that? The free cash, $9 million, and the tax levy and resident.
The thing is that the city manager's office and the finance department, dating back to the many years when Louis DePasquale, current city manager, was sort of, so there were, Jim Maloney was the treasurer, Louis DePasquale was the finance director, and there's a kind of a best practices that they tend to follow, like setting aside money for stabilization funds.
Okay.
So that there's what's so like a shock absorber, so that you don't have like a sudden increase.
That's not considered free cash?
No.
My daughter just loves that term, free cash. And everyone does, because I don't think they understand what it is. Can you explain it, please?
This is where I would you almost want to channel Bob Healy.
Oh, yeah.
He would always object when anybody would use the term free cash. Because,
I agree.
Because
sounds free.
The moment you say free cash, we have a lot of free cash. People say, well,
so why do we keep
why aren't we
using it?
planting more trees?
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing
Building
this,
more
doing that?
So,
and they just immediately wanted to rate it.
so why do they use it, and what is it really?
Well, basically, it really should be called the unallocated fund balance. In other words, the thing is, the city's got a certain levy, and they do what they want. Some positions are not filled, and whatever.
Is it a savings account though? Is it like having a nest egg, or not?
Well, I mean, there is a bank account. I think city does business with Citizens Bank, and it earns interest. But the thing is that at various times the city, it's good financial practice to maintain this sort of you might think of it as a rainy day fund, and certainly if during the middle of a city council term, between budget, when the time the budget is passed and when the next budget comes around, there are certain priorities that come up or opportunities that come up. Let's just say that a building which was going to be really beneficial to the city suddenly became available.
Then they could avail themselves.
Then you have this unallocated funds. You can
and
just
it's only
reach
$9 million. I heard $30 million a while ago. No,
I think it's significantly more actually than that.
Yeah, so maybe that's something you can immediately get versus maybe something that's somewhere else.
So what they do is they put money in stabilization funds. They do the same thing for school building.
Why is it called stabilization fund?
I think it's because really to suggest like stabilization when a car is riding on a bumpy road. So you don't have suddenly like 1 year when you decide to fund or you issue bonds for building a new school, and then so you're adding that into the money that you got to raise per year during the term of that loan. You don't want to necessarily have suddenly the levy goes up and then 2 years later it goes down.
So this kind of keeps it stable.
Keeps it stable.
Right.
So the thing is, people I think are willing to tolerate some property tax increases, but they don't want it to sort of jump up 1 year and then maybe come back and then jump
how about
up.
I know someone personally who's doubled, and they did not get an abatement. So I don't know how they figure all that out, but some of it doesn't seem fair.
There was 1 year mine actually doubled, and I filed for an abatement and got it.
Well, that's because you're Robert Winters, I guess.
No. It was the thing is that there was, I think they were changing from the accounting system a little bit, and you basically you put in certain factors, press the button, and runs through, but it doesn't always work out in a way that makes a whole lot of sense. But as I say, I think
he said he's going to raise his rent. So exactly what people said would happen sometimes, but
well, it's kind of what happens.
Depends.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. All right.
But one of the things, I not to obsess on it or anything like that.
But I think that's good to explain it because people just see, hey, it's for us to take.
I mean, there is a I think a kind of a curious point of view that says, well, don't you know Cambridge is a wealthy city, and that somehow therefore it's perfectly okay to not use free cash to basically to buffer the real estate tax rate rises, for the sake of the residents. People say, well, we should just be raising more and more and more and spending more and more and more. Don't you know there's a crisis about this, that, or the other thing? So Cambridge should simply be, instead of raising, I mean, I'll give you some of the figures here if I got these correctly here. So basically the FY20 budget is $438,128,694. That's not the budget, excuse me, that's the tax levy.
Okay.
The budget is what's approved in April, May, really primarily May. At the end of a long process. But the thing is that some things change from then to now. So then you actually have to kind of set the tax rate to make sure you actually have money to cover the budget, right? So it's the tax. This is not so much the budget here, but the tax levy itself, which will rise 6.9%. This fiscal year.
Wait, so when you say the tax for all categories, or just
it's the overall tax levy
will raise 6 point, but now, less on residential.
Right. The thing is that the greater portion, they sort of, we take advantage of the fact that you can do what they call tax classification, which means you can classify certain properties: commercial, residential, industrial. There are actually two other categories that are basically irrelevant, but maybe farmland or something. But the thing is then you can set tax rates per thousand differently for different classifications. And so and there are limitations. You can't just put it all on the commercial, right? But you start off with what it would be as a flat rate, and then you can skew it within certain parameters.
Is that an 8 or a 2?
That should be a 2, actually.
So why are condos so low? Because they go for $1.2 million, some of them.
Well, the thing is that, all right, so I can actually explain that. That is because it's one of the curiosities that I think actually could use a little revision.
Yeah.
All right, so but just to give the numbers here, so the levy, the total amount of money to be raised via property tax, is going up to $438 million and change, which is a 6.9% increase over the last year.
So they have to make up for that. So.
Right. Now, fiscal 19 last year was actually up 5.3% over the prior year.
Okay.
So we're sort of
going up.
Instead of 5.3, but now we're jumping another 6.9. Yeah. I hasten to add that the listed national rate of inflation is 1.7%. So we are many times
we're spending
faster.
More than we should, or needing to raise more because we're spending more.
The question is should is a big question here. If you're right, I mean there are councilors who inevitably say, Mr. City Manager, we want more and more programs and more benefits.
So just raise
you
the
should
money.
Instead of spending $20 million on affordable housing programs, it should be $40 million.
But on the other hand, they don't want a lot of people. They don't want development. They don't want commercial development, which brings in that they have a very high tax rate.
Yeah, and
so you can't have both, can you?
Well, that's
or
right.
Can you?
Well, the thing is that you can, if you really want to sort of, if you want to fund all the programs and benefits and initiatives that you think, plus the things you simply must do, like school buildings do have to be rebuilt.
Police, fire.
You do have to do that. There are salary increases. There
Security,
are
public
pension
safety,
benefits. Health benefits go up typically faster than inflation.
Ooh,
pension costs can fluctuate. Even that's a whole nother topic, right? About how do you keep that stable, right?
So you can't do it without.
Right. So the thing is that we've always skewed the tax rates to put as much on the commercial and as less on the residential as we possibly can. And we're lucky
that Cambridge is the way it is because of that. And also everyone screams that the universities don't contribute because of that. They do contribute in other ways.
Actually,
in lieu of taxes, right?
Actually, the universities are also property owners of properties that are not being used for institutional use.
That's true. They have real estate departments. You're right.
I could be wrong on this, but I believe MIT is the largest single taxpayer in the city.
I think you might be right.
Even though they are a nonprofit and they have to do payments in lieu of taxes.
The city wouldn't be what it is without Harvard and MIT and some of the. I mean,
it's
just a very funny.
It's an interesting balance that we have to maintain here, but it is inescapably true, and I I wasn't listening or watching the council meeting last night, but I did listen. Well,
no, I was watching, listening, and don't remember anything.
No, we had the electricians over at the house.
Oh, you and the electricians. Jeez.
We're 4 circuits away for having my floor complete, so we're making progress. So.
All right.
But but anyway, what was I going to say on that was So I was listening in to this, and there are some counselors who correctly point out there is a choice that is made, which is that if you want to fund all the programs and if you want to do this, that, and the other, then you have to accept the fact that there's going to have to be commercial growth in order to basically raise the money. Either that, or you say, well, residents, you have to be willing to accept a higher rate. But that's a problem.
But still explain the condo, because I don't understand.
Oh yeah, I'll get that one second.
All right. Okay. All right.
But the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is that even though there may be some newcomers who are all vice presidents of some financial services firm, and they got more money than anybody, but so I don't think they would be impacted by raising some.
And they generally live in a single family, and they're not house rich, cash poor. Some people are.
A lot of them live in condos.
Exactly.
Right? But the thing is that you do have a lot of people who are just long-term residents who may be getting some extra additional money from rents, whatever, but maybe not.
Well, but the 2-family, 3 families are taxed less than the other ones.
But they are.
But more than condos, which is not right.
No, I can explain that though.
Okay.
But the thing is that I think Louis, the city manager, has always been mindful, and Richie before him, and Bob before him, that you don't want to set your tax policies and set all the rates in such a way that you're going to slam the long-term residents in those 2 families and single families and triple deckers too, quite honestly. Hard.
Right.
So the thing is they've tried to they've always actually almost like undeveloped parts of the city were almost like money in the bank or potential money in the bank, where we can allow a little bit of growth over in University Park, or we can allow some growth over in North Point, or now LOF Triangle and now Quadrangle are sort of potential places where you can have an acceptable amount of growth, which can bring in new money, right, which is not subject to the Prop 2.5 levy limits anyway, so you can always continue to increase your levy limit as well as the levy itself, and then basically buffer the residential tax base so they don't get slammed with the additional costs. So, but at some point we're actually going to build out LOI Quadrangle. North Point is being developed. There will come a day, maybe within the decade, when there simply will not be additional new parts of the city where you really can do anything, and then a different policy will probably have to
but I don't think we should wait that long, since so many things are now now instead of a single family home you're buying a condo, which is about the same as a single family home used to be, and they should be paying more. I don't get it.
The thing is that when there was some controversy about this when Michael Sullivan was mayor, I believe. So that would have been, 15 years ago at this point now.
Condos weren't what they're selling.
Right, but the thing is that what was happening was, and it's been a trend that's been happening since the 90s really, is that in terms of the fraction of the residential tax base that consisted of single family, 2-family, 3-family, bigger apartment buildings, as well as condos. Condos was the smallest category. Now it's the biggest category.
Well, then something's got to be done.
What's happened is all these triple deckers have been turned into condos.
Well, that's a good point. So, but I wonder if they're still being,
Well, here's the problem: is that the tax rates, the ones that are listed on this, with the city manager's message, included the residential exemption. And there is this little twist of fate here. The residential exemption is now up to $411,300.
So you're saying the first 411 of their 1.2 million is
exempt.
Get rid of it.
So for example, now don't worry, folks. I'm keeping my triple decker, but the thing is as a owner occupant of my triple decker. The property is valued at a certain level, but then I get to reduce it by $411,316, and then I'm taxed on that.
I understand that.
If I were to split my place into 3 condos, each of which would be owner occupied, then each would get their own residential exemption, which means the city would be getting,
so you're saying the rate
$1.2 million cut off the top.
So you're saying they get that subtracted plus they only pay then 2.8 above that?
Yeah, because
that's crazy.
The way it works, especially when they went from 20% up to 30% residential exemption, is that it became the sweetest deal on earth for condominium owners.
Well, that person I was referring to has kept his stuff as rentals. It's not owner-occupied, but he's kept it as rentals, and he gets slammed.
He gets slammed. It's true.
It's not right.
It's true.
Something's got to change.
There is city tax policies basically helping to accelerate the move toward condominiumization.
Well,
but in terms of what your median tax rate, residential tax bill would go up, median now. It varies from
it's not that much,
different parts of the city. But for singles, they're going to take an 8.9% increase. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
I think 7.4% for two families, 6% for three, and 2.8% for condos.
So this is for the future budget, not this past.
That's for this levy here. In other words, when you get your tax bill,
which comes when in the spring,
next week.
Oh, so this is.
This is basically I'm sure they're printing them right now.
Wait, do you get tax bills twice a year?
Yeah, you get. But the thing
so
is,
it was the spring one that this person.
So what you get, basically, what you do is you get
go up even more. He's gonna scream.
So it gets set now, and then what could go down? You know, who knows?
I doubt.
Right. But the thing is that you basically get hit with your tax bill for the year, and they basically cut it in two.
Okay.
And then so you pay your fall bill, and then you pay your spring bill.
Well, I'll follow that, and I'll let you know.
We'll see. But.
You can let us know what happens.
If this was almost any place else in the world, people would go, "Oh, what's going on here, Mr. Manager? Why is my tax bill going up so up here?" But the wealthier people go, "Oh, I'm willing to pay it," right?
Wasn't that one of Fred Meyer's arguments about the affordable housing? Is that instead of doing this, why don't we should be paying more in property taxes? He said that. I think
that is one point of view. Yeah.
And he's not the only one, but I know other people have said that.
Well, another point of view was that inclusionary zoning basically produces the units, but the developer of the residential building is the one who funds for the affordable units.
Yeah.
So the city's actually not paying for that at all.
True.
So that, in terms of, my personal opinion is that the city's policies for how they're creating these so-called affordable units is one of the most cost ineffective methods imagineable, and but it's politically very viable, so it goes. So anyway, so in the end, it's they approve everything. I think there was one no vote.
There were a couple no. I think Quinton had some no votes on.
I think it was on the one where right, and I don't know, maybe that's relevant to voters. So if there are two, it was Dennis Carlone and Quentin Zonovan, basically, when they said, shall we use money from free cash to reduce the residential tax burden, they voted, it was a 7-2 vote. Two people said, no, don't reduce the residential tax burden.
Well, I wish more of them had said that.
I don't know. I'm one of those residential taxpayers.
I know, but you just said you get the exemption, you get all this other stuff.
Well, no, I get my one exemption, but the thing is that, I expect my property tax bill will be going up at least 6%.
You also were charging a whole lot less for your rental.
I know.
So, it all balances out. I'm not going to feel bad for you at all.
Back when they were talking about, actually the residential exemption is the same amount for all categories. So if you're a three-family, two-family, single-family, 3, 2, 1,
but only if you're owner-occupied.
It's a flat rate that, owner-occupied.
Right.
So it was suggested, and there are some people in the legislature who were receptive to the idea that the residential exemption shouldn't be the same for all categories, so that you would have a different residential exemption for condominium class based on what the total levy is.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think it makes complete sense, but the thing is that it also would almost have guaranteed that the condominiums tax bills would go up to be more fair.
Yeah.
But once they started to become the most prevalent piece, then politically they would not have liked it, so it went nowhere.
Who's they?
These are the elected officials who they could have filed a home rule petition to basically seek the adjustment or lobby the state legislatures, and they didn't pursue it.
I will find out who those, whatever.
I honestly, I do think that some of this stuff is with the state, and the state should be periodically looking at the way they structure these things.
That came up with the small business category and how they get taxed. I think Craig Kelly brought that up, and that it is there's a state bill or something about that.
Yeah, it's
they get screwed a
lot. The wheels of state government grind quite slowly sometimes, and sometimes that's a good thing because they're not like rushing to pass things that they're going to regret. But I think when it comes to taxation or, giving options for cities to be able to kind of keep things stable, and then if they are going to kind of look for something, they come in, they want to go for the big, the nuclear type options, like let's have a state enabling legislation to just impose rent control or something like that.
That's still out there, isn't it?
Right, but the thing is that that's very sexy, and you get a lot of attention when you do that, Mr. Representative Connolly. But the truth is that there's a lot of other things that should be getting a second look and a third look that are a lot less sexy, like tax classification and whether the residential exemptions should be a flat rate for all categories, right? You're not going to you're not going to put out a press release on that and get a lot of attention and votes, So, but those are the sorts of things that legislators should be looking at, in my humble opinion. So that was just one part of the meeting.
I know, right? That was just at 6:30.
Yeah, and
only 2 public commenters.
Yeah, which I
it was Emily Dexter and Christopher Schmidt.
Yeah. So, who put in a letter saying, please don't lower our residential taxes, jack it all up, raise even more money from the people.
He's an interesting guy.
Interesting guy, but I can't say that I warm up to that point of view. Yeah. Now, there are a few other interesting things that are certainly noteworthy. One thing I think is very much noteworthy, I think we kind of telegraphed this at a previous week, was that there was a Harvard Square zoning petition came in. Now, not to get into all the particulars, because I'm only just trying to get up to speed myself.
Yeah,
on this,
I don't.
But
is it an overlay thing? Is that what it is?
Well, there's already a Harvard Square overlay, so
what does this do?
I view this as a proposed revision to the Harvard Square overlay.
I see.
So, just like there's a Central Square overlay, and with it came the Central Square Advisory Committee that I'm on. The Harvard Square, I think even earlier, maybe they got an overlay, and there's a Harvard Square overlay and an advisory committee. All right, and a couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, there was something called the Crone petition.
Oh.
And that didn't get passed because there were some issues that might have thwarted good things that may be coming on Church Street with Gerald Chana. There were other factors too.
Yeah.
It was also kind of heavy-handed in that
Wasn't that a reaction to it was a reaction to something, I thought, that was going on.
I think it kind of came along with some of the controversy about the kiosk, but I don't think it was really super related.
Okay. All right.
I think it was, but it had things, I think it was a lot of resentment of people who are actually serving on the Harvard Square Advisory Committee. They wanted to put term limits and other things, which honestly, I don't think that's a good thing for advisory committees. I think people shouldn't stay on advisory committees for life, but...
Is that still I thought that was just around that project, the advisory committee.
No, there were other things in it too.
Because there's like a Harvard Business Association, there's that, and now there's the Harvard Neighborhood Association.
So the thing is that part of the proposal here is that they want to change modify, not radically, but modify the composition of the Harvard Square Advisory Committee.
Oh.
They want to have a lawyer or an architect that's 2 people, one representative from Harvard, one representing non-formula businesses. See, this is Patrick Barrett, who's he was a large author.
He brought all these different disparate groups together.
Right, absolutely. Yep. And well, they kind of invited him in.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. But then he helped facilitate this stuff. 4 residents, member of the Harvard Square Neighborhood Association would actually be
4 residents that are within a certain area, right?
Within the district. A member from the Historical Commission. Harvard Square is fundamentally a bit different than Central Square in that the historic building aspect of things is a little more significant there. Not 100%, but it's more significant. So you're basically customizing your overlay to fit the place a bit. There also are changes to allowable densities, which could encourage some additional housing. So, a jump in some of that.
What is the area encompassed? Do you know what the geographic boundaries are?
What encompasses Harvard Square is a matter of opinion.
Oh, okay.
There definitely are limits there is a map that goes with that, just like there's a map for the Central Square overlay.
Right, I've seen that one.
But occasionally we've actually had cases come before us because, well, it was close enough and we thought we wanted your opinion, right?
Well, it obviously encompasses Harvard.
Yeah, but Harvard's the square is in an irregularly shaped plane, so it would include Brattle Street, Mass Ave,
Mount Auburn,
going down probably to Putnam Square.
I figured that would
not
be
all
the
the way to
boundary
Putnam,
there.
but to Quincy Square.
Quincy Square.
It could go actually further down. I'm not sure.
No, but that makes more sense. Quincy Square, yeah.
But the thing is, never mind the particulars of the petition. What's really significant is it's really about Patrick. Is that, when he gets involved in things like this, he does something that few others really do around town, which is to actually get people who normally are not kind of on the same page in the same room together. And there was this wonderful picture when they were, about to turn this in, of people signing it, where I saw people who were basically yelling at each other a while back.
Yeah.
There they are, all posing in the same picture, like they're all ready to go out.
No, it was nice to see some congeniality and some support amongst people that don't always agree.
Exactly.
So that was nice.
And maybe maybe the way you do that is you're a little less ambitious with your goals, so that you're not stomping on people's toes. But that's a good thing. Honestly, my opinion about zoning is that you shouldn't be trying to shoot the moon.
No.
You really should be a bit more incremental. And I think if we were to just try to be a little more incremental and, you change the rules a little bit.
Yeah.
3 years later, you revisit it again, you tweak it a little more.
Before you end this, does it say anything about transportation and cars, or is that not part of this zoning?
No. I mean, it is interesting.
That's a big issue.
There was city council orders saying we should be doing more street closures for events in Harvard Square.
Which they do now, but they want it more.
Councilor Zondervan, I think, was voted.
Yeah.
I don't know if he voted against that, but I think because he says
no
I want to ban cars entirely. And route them around Harvard Square.
I kind of almost agree with that.
But here's as Richie Rossi used to always point this out. If you say you don't want cars in this road, then you're basically putting them on somebody else's road.
Well, that's true too. And you're still going to have deliveries and trucks.
Exactly. So it's not as easy as
but there can be. But you can again incrementally change some of that.
I think the right way to do is incrementally, and I think this is a good step.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Anyway, we're gonna scoot for 3 minutes, and then we'll be back on Cambridge Inside Out.